Tonight, I want to, well, it's my pleasure to introduce our dear friend, Herb Kagan. Herb's with us, has been with us twice a month for the last year. And he is finishing up, he's been taking us through the 12 steps with a spiritual and emotional sobriety slant. And tonight he's going to help us, wait to hear what I said. You'll like this, Herb. He's going to help us improve our consciousness by a closer look at step 11. And oh, by the way, he's going to talk about meditation. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. And I have a feeling the rest of you are too. So sit back, relax, and it's all yours, Herb.
Thank you so much, Susie. My name is Herb, and I am an alcoholic. That's my website. It is very robust. It has a lot of resources. It's like a library. And one of the resources is what's called the Way of Life document. It's on the page where my workshops are listed. And it's a link to a 66-page document. The major feature of it for this discussion that we'll have of consciousness, thank you, Susie, is about meditation. It's probably my most favorite subject and my most favorite step. I've done more work, more recordings, more writing on step 11 and meditation than I've done in any of the other work in my 39 years of sobriety. Well, I'm pushing it. I'll be 39 on February 21st, but you know how we are. So pages 44 to 51 of that Way of Life document is not only an outline from the big book combined with some comments from the 12 and 12 in the area of prayer and meditation, but it also is a script, a literal filled out script if you have any interest in beginning a prayer and meditation practice and or perhaps supplementing the one that you have. The total point of the 12-step process, I'm bullseye target. The total point, the only point of the 12-step process is to awaken. That's my interpretation of step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. It's not a result. Read it. The result of these steps is a spiritual awakening. That's what Bill had his third day of hospitalization. Look at page 14 in the big book. That's his spiritual experience. And I'm using that word in contrast to spiritual awakening. It was a mystical mountaintop experience. Third day hospitalization. He had worked the steps with Ebby the day before. Second day of hospitalization, look at page 13 in the big book. There's more history than is confirmed there, but that's the distilled version of it. No pun intended. No pun intended. Page 13, he works the steps on his second day of hospitalization, December 12th, 1984, 1934. And on December 13th or 14th, he has his mountaintop experience. He wrote the book. He created 12 steps instead of 6 steps, the 6 steps of the Oxford group, which he worked. But he wanted to squeeze out the wiggle room for alcoholics. We're wily, and he knew that because he was one, of course. And he created step 11. He wrote it in 2.5 pages, pages 85 to 88. If you have time sometime, read it and highlight it, looking for the instructions, read it and highlight it, and then go back and outline it. It outlines wonderfully, and I'm going to fill in some of at least my knowledge and my experience in interpreting. This is Herb's interpretation of step 11 from the Big Book. Our practice of consciousness. You know, Susie was right on the money. This is what it's all about. Waking up. One of the Russian philosophers, Gurdjieff, said, all human beings are asleep, dreaming that we're awake. I love wisdom, precise, distilled. Most human beings are asleep, dreaming that they're awake. I did not know that I did not know that I was an alcoholic until, in fact, it was revealed to me, a story for a different day. I wasn't shocked that I was an alcoholic. I was shocked that I had never seen it. I went through the steps out of the Big Book on my own. In my first year, I had no experience because I didn't know what I was doing and I got no help. I didn't know I needed help. I didn't know that I didn't know. I couldn't see that I didn't see. I'm not trying to be cute or poetic. I'm trying to capture my experience and communicate it to you, to know that this is a process of waking up. At 4 years of sobriety, 1988, February, I met a man who took me then through the steps out of the Big Book, and he had no particular training in terms of human development, but he had been taken through the steps himself out of the Big Book. He called it a textbook that had precise instructions, and he gave me those precise instructions in step 11. And for the very first time, I was able to understand what meditation is and how to do it. And I began a practice in, probably January of 1989. Once I had finished the steps and learned the practice and the process that this man had communicated to me, and I was able to meditate on a daily basis ever since. With very few exceptions, I have meditated since 1989 on a daily basis because he cracked the code for me. It was like he put one of those minor helmets on my head with the little light in the front. And when he gave me the instructions of his experience and understanding of the Big Book, he was like turning on the light so that I could see the instructions in each of the sentences. It was like the sentences cracked open, and the meaning of, and the practice of, and the understanding of the 11th step came to life for me. Now, some of you know, most of you don't. I was a monk for 7 years. Yeah, early on, ages 17 to 24, I was a monk, 7 years in a monastery, 7 years of silence, 7 years of daily meditation. And in 1964, when I left the monastery, I hung my black robe up, and I didn't meditate for another 25 years. Well, because I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't know why I was doing it, and I didn't know how to do it. It had come to me from the outside like the black robe. I put on the black robe. Monks meditate. I meditated. I took the black robe off. I'm not a monk. I don't meditate. Yeah. It's very human of me. Einstein said, the consciousness that created the problem cannot be the consciousness that solves the problem. I'm a mad dog seeker all my life from age 11, 12 years old. The religious commitment to become a missionary priest, a Catholic priest, for 7 years. Then when that didn't work, I attempted to become a psychologist. 6 years, graduate education in psychology. And when that didn't work, I tried all the various forms of self-development, and I got a job in corporate America, and that worked for me. But it didn't help me with my consciousness. It helped me with my pocketbook. Step 11, sought. It's a very active process. Please use the set-aside prayer that was begun with, thank you very much, the Berlin group for incorporating the set-aside prayer. All it is a prayer. Well, all it is. What it is a prayer asking the universe, whatever it is you believe is a power other than yourself, to bring the crowbar and open your mind and open your heart. And that's what I'm asking you today. Lots of you, most of you probably have some idea about what prayer is. Most of you have some idea what meditation is. Most of you pray. Most of you do not meditate. And if you do, perhaps you meditate in a way that is not step 11. Step 11 is not silent. Step 11 is not no thinking. Step 11 is not emptiness. God bless them. The people from the East brought that vocabulary to us in the 50s and the 60s. Tibet, India, China, Japan. They brought a contemplative practice to us, but their language was not English. That was their second language, and they didn't look it up in a dictionary that actually was accurate, I'm assuming, because they called it meditation, what they do, and it's not. It's contemplation. A very different process, a very different consciousness process. I have since 1989 incorporated contemplation into my step 11 practice of meditation. I'm not going to venture into that area right now. I might later on, depending on how the spirit moves me. Meditation is the use of my mind to think. Contemplation is the use of my will to acknowledge the presence of God. Very different functions in my human capacity. My mind is built to think, and my will is built to love. Very different. So let's stay with meditation. Look it up in a dictionary. That's what this man had me do. Yeah, look up the word meditation. I follow direction, even though I thought, don't you know, I was a monk for 7 years. Me, look up the word yes, look it up, Herb. Okay, I did. I looked it up in several dictionaries, and it's interesting. In the dictionary, most of them anyway, the Webster dictionary that I use said meditation is directed thinking. Those are words that should ring with you if you have read and understood the directions in the big book. Because Bill says, upon awakening, we ask God to direct our thinking. So you see, Bill knew. Bill knew what meditation was. He got it from the Oxford group and Ann Smith, who trained Bob, her husband, and Bill in meditation when Bill stayed with them for 3 months there after Bob got sober. 1935. Bill was exposed to the Oxford group meditation practice. One word is the purpose of meditation practice in the Oxford group. Just one word, and it opens it up for us. I hope you hear it. The one word is guidance. Guidance. Bill and Bob meditated every morning for guidance for the day. Bill and Bob meditated every day for guidance with their life. Well, Bill crafted then the step 11 words in 1939-38 when he was writing the big book to improve my conscious contact with God. Oh, that assumes that I have contact. That implies that I have conscious contact. Contact is existential, ontological, big words. Just means that there is no place that there is not God. We're in existential, ontological contact with the reality. Well, of course, this is my interpretation of it. That's not in the big book. And we wake up to the fact we're in constant contact in step 2, and in step 3, that we're in conscious contact, making a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God. And in step 11, once we've cleaned out the channel that we are of life and light and God and power as we don't understand it, then we improve that conscious contact on a daily basis, praying, asking for knowledge, guidance, and power. Because many times I knew what to do. Most of the time I didn't do what I knew was the right thing. I call it alignment, step 3. It's not in the big book, that word, but it helps me understand the intent of step 3. To be in alignment with reality as it manifests. Those are words that have just come to me in the last 5 years as the result of the work I've done with Dr. Berger on emotional sobriety. So think about this. What is your understanding of meditation? Today, currently, if somebody had asked you, well, what is meditation? What would you have said? How do you do it? Do you actually know how to do meditation? Why do you do it? Why don't you do it? Most of the people I talk to about meditation go, oh, no, it's really important. You know, it's step 11. It's about conscious contact with God. It's about connecting to God for power on a daily basis. It's critically important. And then I say, and do you do it? And they go, well, no, I don't really have time. So you don't believe a word you said. No. Don't tell me what you think. Don't tell me how you feel. Don't tell me what your opinion is. Tell me how your feet are moving, and I'll tell you what you believe. Tell me how your feet are moving, your behavior, and I'll tell you what you believe. If you're not praying daily, you don't believe that you need power, or that there is power, or that prayer is a method of connecting to power. If you're not doing it, you don't believe it. Sorry to be so confrontational. Sometimes it's like cold water in the face, but that's what wakes us up sometimes. Do you really need guidance and power? So today, what's the invitation? Today, you just prayed the set-aside prayer. Did you mean it? Is your mind and your heart open? Is there a God? A higher power? A spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things? Quoting from the big book, my most favorite line. The spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things. Is God necessary? Really, seriously. This was the confrontation I had at 10 years of sobriety. I'd had 2 prior spiritual awakenings. 1988, when I went through the work for the first time. 1991, when I went through the second time. I blew by steps 2 and 3. Even though I was meditating, even though I had spiritual awakenings, I'm not going to describe them right now. I could. Broad, deep, powerful, radical changes in the way I thought and felt and behaved. But at 10 years of sobriety, this man asked me some of the questions I'm asking you. How do you behave in light of what you believe you believe? I discovered my own agnosticism, not theoretical, practical agnosticism. I did not behave as if I believed on a regular basis. I was relying on my religious tradition and the vocabulary and the theology of that tradition, which I loved the theology. It just didn't get translated into my feet. I wasn't behaving as if I believed, which allowed me then to crack the code on steps 2 and 3 and to have then a personal relationship with a power other than myself. See, Bill gave us the circle and the triangle for Alcoholics Anonymous. Then Al-Anon took that and inverted it and put the circle inside the triangle. Wonderful symbols of the human relationship with the spirit. Are we spiritual beings seeking a human experience, or are we human beings seeking a spiritual experience? You've heard it. I took it seriously. I took it into meditation. My answer is yes. Yes. Human, spirit, spirit, human. Yes. Two sides of the same coin. Bill says the spirit that presides over us all. A higher power is an alternative vocabulary. Wonderful approach to steps 2 and 3. We get to make a choice as to what the concept is. We get to make a choice and a decision as to our relationship. What is your concept? What is your relationship? What is your concept? Step 2. What is your relationship? Step 3. Do you believe it? The spirit deep down inside? Read Appendix 2, where Bill defines what is spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening is, how they're the same and how they're different. Unsuspected inner resource. Fabulous lines. Unsuspected. I didn't know that I didn't know it. 10 years of sobriety. Truly, intellectually, verbally, but not truly connected to the reality of this. There is no place that there is not God. The spirit deep down inside me. Unsuspected, inner, deep down resource. Read page 55. Answers the question that were posed on page 45. Where and how are we going to find this power? Bill gives us 2 paragraphs, never redundant, except when he wants to really emphasize an issue. 2 paragraphs that talk about where and how to find this power other than ourselves. Spirit everywhere. God is, or God isn't. God is everything, or there is no God. Read page 53, chapter 4. We're confronted with the question of faith. Human, spirit, spirit, human. Thomas Merton, probably a mystic and a prophet, a monk, died in 1968, prolific writer. He says, quoting probably ancient people before him, God is that reality that has no circumference. God is that reality that we call higher power. God is that reality whose center is everywhere. Now that's a mind twister. God is that reality that has no circumference. That's where Bill gave us the circle. Transcendence. God is that reality whose center is everywhere. Immanence. The circle inside the human being, the triangle, body, mind, and will. Spirit everywhere. This is Bill's philosophy. This is Bill's theology. Page 53, page 55, Appendix 2. Bill was a mystic. I believe it with all my heart. There's no way he could have had these insights and phrased these words without having that experience, which I believe he got initially in his mountaintop mystical experience, spiritual experience. Join me in this 3rd step prayer. It's cleaned up to have current vocabulary. God, I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you wish. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of your power, your love, and your way of life. May I do your will always, to be in alignment with reality, my definition of God's will. I don't believe God has will. I have a paper on that. I've written a reflection. Perhaps you've seen it. But step 10 says we enter the world of the spirit. Well, where the hell have we been? Oh, steps 1 through 9, the world of self. And we made a commitment to turn in step 3. And we committed to take the actions of step 4 through 9. The turning is the actions of 4 through 9 to be turned from my self-centeredness to other-centeredness with a capital O, other-centeredness with a small o, steps 11 and 12, a relationship with power other than myself, deep inside myself, and a contribution to the community around me. Using my body, using my mind, it's in all caps for a reason. That's the thing that makes me specifically human at one side of the coin, and the other side of the coin, the other function in me that allows me to be a human being. My mind allows me to reflect, and my will allows me to make decisions, to take actions. Bill uses the word recovered in the title page. Check it out. The second title page in the big book, how thousands of men and women have recovered, and he uses that terminology consistently through the book, past tense. And on page 84, he said, we're placed in a position of neutrality. That's what I think he means by recovered. I'm not experiencing the craving because there's no alcohol in me, and I'm not experiencing the obsession because I have a protective shield, a power other than myself. By finishing step 9, I am placed in a position of neutrality. I am not resisting it. I am not thinking about it. I am not attracted to it. My mind has been relieved of its vulnerability to the obsession. Recovered. That's physical sobriety. But I'm not cured. Now we're in the sphere of emotional sobriety and spiritual sobriety. I'm not cured. I have a daily practice, a daily reprieve. I'm not cured of my unmanageability, my selfishness, self-centeredness. Read page 62. That first paragraph talks about the root of our problem, selfishness, but the second paragraph confirms the wooden stake in the heart. Yes, I mean it. We can't reduce it much by wishing or trying on our own power. We need God's help. He ends unmanageability in the same way he ends addiction on page 43. There'll come a time and a place where we'll have no effective mental defense against the first drink. We need God's help. Do you have a sense of well-being today, emotional sobriety? Do you have a sense of contentment today? Have you finished your 9th step? The majority of people I talk to, it may only be geographic. It may not be the same experience that you have in your area. Most people in my area have not finished their 9th step. Most people haven't even finished their 8th step. Some haven't finished their 6th and 7th step. Somehow they get finished with their 5th step and they go, wow, glad that's done. And they go on to go to meetings and blah, 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 blah. The promises are out. The promises of the 9th step and the work from 4 through 9 complete are on pages 83 and 84. It's an interesting contrast to the bedevilments on page 52. If you look at the bedevilments on page 52 and you look at the promises on pages 83 and 84, you'll see there's a direct lineup. Look in my Way of Life document, and I quote Dan Sherman, who wrote his own instructions on doing the steps, called Big Book Awakening. I've written a guide to the 12-step process, similar to Dan's, but different in terms of its approach. We were both taken through the steps at different times by the same person, a fellow named Joe Hawk. That was my third journey through the steps, a very contemplative, a very powerful process that allowed me to have a new experience with steps 2 and 3, as I indicated earlier. Our way of living, that's what Bill calls it, our practices of step 10, clearing the channel. We do step 4 to do the bulldozer excavation that gets down under the exact nature of the sources of our problems, selfishness as manifest in resentment and fear and dishonesty, inappropriate sexual behavior and secrets. But we're asked to wash and rinse and repeat in step 10. Bill calls it a spot check inventory. When I'm disturbed, he says in the 12 and 12, it's a spiritual axiom. When I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. When I'm disturbed, it's the blinking light on the dashboard. It's the emotional disturbance that says, hey, Herb, you're out of alignment. Get back in alignment. And step 10 brings me back into alignment with reality as it's manifesting, or God's will in the awkward vocabulary of today's big book and our common jargon. By my standards, step 11 fills that channel with light. I've been very fascinated in the last 5 or 10 years with the terminology of darkness and light. It's very interesting. Darkness, by definition, is just the absence of light. And I sit in the presence of light. I sit in the presence of power. To absorb light, to absorb power, to be absorbed by light, to be absorbed by power. Some of the things that stimulate me in terms of my spiritual journey. And then just by living, I empty the channel. Distributing the light, distributing the power. I'm not the light, I'm not the power, but I'm the lantern. And I want to expand the lantern to be able to expand the light, to be helpful to others. Step 11. Sought. Prayer and meditation, those are the tools. Well, what is prayer? What is meditation? Because it's about improving my conscious contact. I made a decision that there is constant contact in step 2. I made a decision in step 3 to have conscious contact. Hear the words, I'm playing on them. With God as I don't understand it. Any God that I would understand would be way too small to deliver me to the place I have been delivered. To improve my knowledge of my mind, to improve the power of my will. Not only to know better, but also to be able to do better. Oops. Sometimes my technology goes amiss. So what is prayer? It's very easy. I heard it in the meeting. It's wonderful wisdom. It's a synthesis, a distillation of the truth. Prayer is when I'm talking to God. Meditation is when I'm listening to God. If you get nothing else from this, you may have heard it before, but hear it at a deep level today, because that's as simple as it gets. Prayer is when I'm talking. Meditation is when I'm listening. Prayer, intimate conversation. Why do I do it? To form a relationship. Think about how you determine and develop a relationship with human beings. You spend time. You have a conversation. It's spontaneous. It's not scripted. It's not written down. It's a coming from the heart, coming from the soul, coming from your most intimate inner being to have this conversation. But it does depend on what you believe about God. The silver bullet of the 12-step process is it's your choice. We have no dogma. We have no theology. We have no rules and regulations. And Bill said it. We don't need them. There's only two disciplines in Alcoholics Anonymous. One is God and one is alcohol. We can broaden it today for the universe here, especially. All 12-step programs are invited here. There's only two disciplines, God and addiction. Or go to the light and darkness. There's only two disciplines, darkness and light. And then he said, you're either going for one or you're going for the other. My most favorite metaphor is the dimmer switch. It's either going up or it's going down. Once it's on, there's a light, there's a minimum energy of electricity going into the system. But you can turn it up and create more electricity, more energy going into the system that will create more light, or it can go down a notch at a time and the darkness descends. We're either going toward the light or we're going toward the darkness, and there's no rest. There's no middle ground. There is no neutrality, pause. And the dimmer switch is on a structural trigger to go backwards. Dr. Tebow said, Bill got it right. The first 9 steps are for the deflation of the ego at depth, but the ego has an uncanny way of regenerating itself. Uncanny way of regenerating itself. The dimmer switch is moving forward because I have my shoulder against the dimmer switch, preventing it from going backwards and hopefully pushing it a little forward, a notch at a time, a click at a time. Otherwise, it goes backwards toward the darkness. The results are conscious contact. We wake up and then we stay awake. If we meditate, Bill's very clear, 2.5 pages, the best information about how to do meditation and why to do meditation I've ever come across before or after the big book. 2.5 pages, 85 to 88. But he starts out with the evening practice, which is curious. I would have started out with the morning practice. So why did he start out with the evening practice? Probably because he just finished in the big book describing 84 and 85, step 10, what you do during the day. So in the event that you didn't be as thorough as you could during the day, he starts out step 11 as to what you do at night. When you finish your day, perhaps you have a little bit more readiness to evaluate as a radar sweep of the day. Are there any blips on the radar screen in the evening? I don't have much time or energy in the evening. Never been successful with much of a consistent of any substantial meditation practice at night. I do a radar sweep to see if there's anything I need to clean up either that day or the next day. My most favorite time is the morning. And this man took me through the steps and he said, read and highlight pages 85 to 88. I did that. When I finished that, he said, now go back and outline it. And I outlined it like I have here on the slide. What you do in the evening, what you do in the morning, and what you do all day long. But the morning practice, he spent some time on. He said, upon awakening, we ask God to direct our thinking. I'm quoting now. And he said to me, well, that's a prayer, Herb. We ask God is code for talking to God. It's a prayer. It goes like this. God, please direct my thinking. Oh my God. Could it be that simple? I mean, it really startled me when he said that. I hadn't seen it. Outlining it, looking in the dictionary, reading and highlighting. I had not seen that. It was when he said it that it became real for me. God, please direct my thinking. And the big book then says we begin thinking. Think about the 24 hours ahead. Consider our plans for the day. That's not redundant. Bill isn't redundant. He avoids redundancy. That's why in 6 and 7, he used two words, defects of character and shortcomings. He explained it in a recording I heard. He said, in the basic English language I was taught, we use different words in consecutive sentences to express the same idea. So he's not being redundant here when he says, think about the 24 hours and consider our plans for the day. I don't know what he means by it because he didn't tell us, but I make stuff up because I have a responsibility to attempt to understand what he said. Think about the 24 hours ahead. So it's kind of like I scan my day planner. I'm old generation. I have literally a written day plan for the day and for the week and for the month. I scan it. Sometimes I have it by me and I open it up to check out what's going on today, what I need to do, and what I need to think about. Is everything there in my activity in alignment with my understanding of principles, my understanding of alignment with God's will? Obviously, today it always is. Seriously. Consider my plans for the day. Well, what's that? Well, if in fact thinking about the 24 hours ahead is about my activity, perhaps consider your plans for the day is about my attitude, my intention. Think about the 24 hours ahead is about my behavior. Consider your plans for the day is about who am I going to be today? Yesterday I was inconsiderate. Today I'll be considerate. Yesterday I was insensitive. Today I'll try to be sensitive. Yesterday I was very distracted with all the people. Today I'll try to be more mindful. You see, my meditation in the morning is about correcting the character defects du jour. Something manifests yesterday that I would like to improve. Today, I'm going to make an effort in partnership with God. God's the managing partner. Well, read the meditation on page 75 at the end of the 5th step. It's a beautiful set of promises, and then there's a meditation. Step 5, promises. Step 5, meditation. And Bill ends it with walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Whew, what an image. Walking hand in hand. God's my partner. I don't turn my will and my life over to God. That's a misinterpretation of step 3. I turn my will and my life over to the care of God. That's my interpretation of being in alignment with. God's the managing partner. I manage my life in guidance from the managing partner. God does not manage my life. I manage my life. That's my responsibility, to know what to do and then to do what I know is the right thing to do to become a decent and to sustain being a decent human being. Now, here's what's not in the big book. If you get nothing else from today, if you get this is the key that unlocks the door to meditation. It will forever change your life. It's not in the big book this way. This key, I did not know. Everything up till now was in the big book, and I had some understanding of it. This man said to me, as he was unpacking it for me based on his knowledge and his experience, we ask God to direct our thinking, then we begin thinking. Here it comes. We listen to our thinking as an answer to our prayer. We listen to our thinking, we listen to our feelings, we listen to our imagination, we listen to our memory, we listen to our feelings, we listen to our sensations, we listen to anything that's going on in us as the possible response to our prayer and direction. Changed my life. I was able, after that, to sit and listen to my thinking. An active process of seeking answers, an active process of seeking relationship, an active process of seeking alignment with reality as it manifests. You've heard many times in meetings the wee small voice, and it's a wonderful phrase, and it has a good intention. It's just an inaccurate translation of the original language. wee small voice is a mistranslation. As I understand it, I'm not a linguist, but I read material from people who are. And they said the proper translation is tiny whispering sound. It may sound the same, but it's not. Tiny whispering voice, tiny whispering sound. Listen to the whatever's going on and be aware, be conscious, improve your consciousness, and listen to whatever is the action and activity that's going on as the possible guidance of the Spirit. Fabulous. All day long, be awake and pause and listen. Be awake to the signal on the dashboard, yellow light flashing, I'm disturbed, pause, take the action of step 10. So what is meditation? It's active thinking and listening. Why do we do it? The science is in. We will be healthier. The science is in. We will have better emotions. The science is in. We'll have better relationships in sociology. But that's not step 11. It's not about peace. It's not about stress. It's not about harmony. It's about a conscious contact with the Spirit. Conscious contact with God as we don't understand it, for guidance and power. Tiny whispering sound. How did we do it? Bill in the 12 and 12 gives us a very different model, which is a wonderful model. He says if you are distracted and you can't sit still and or you have a busy mind and you can't channel it, he said just do some reading of, for instance, the St. Francis prayer, a word or a phrase, and think about it. What's your instinct about it? Read and think about the words of the prayer, a word at a time, a phrase at a time, and chew on it. Chew on it. What does it mean? What's its guidance? What's your experience? What's its invitation? And then, in a different way, for meditation, pay attention and listen to the sounds and the voices and whatever else you can listen to, not with your ears. I've never heard God talk here. I've heard God talk through my intuitions, from my instincts, from my inspirations, my intentions to be guided and in alignment with reality. Inspiration coming from the Greek word spiros, meaning breath, S-P-I-R-O-S, breath. The breath of God in me. Meditation, prayer, contemplation, it's like trying to catch the wind, isn't it? We can feel it sometimes, we can observe it sometimes. Becoming a lantern. The total purpose from my standpoint is to make contact with the light that's deep inside me, to foster the light so that I can be a lantern that stands by the path, that shines the light of my experience on the path that I have walked so that others can walk that path and have their own experience. I'm not one bit interested in creating little Herbies. Nope. I'm just a lantern. I'm not the light. That's a major distinction, given my recovering narcissism. But this has improved my consciousness to mitigate that irremediable personality disorder that cannot be treated by therapy and or medication. On a scale of 1 to 10, Dr. Berger indicated I might have been a 7.5 or 8 in the early days. And when we connected about 20 years ago, a reevaluation because of the work that I had done, thanks to the big book and some really wonderful guidance from the mentors in my life. He suggested maybe I'm a 2.5 or 3. Never totally healed, but a remedy from the spiritual work that's been done, a practice. I started with 1 minute. I went to 5 minutes pretty quickly. And I allowed the Spirit to lead me to 20 minutes. But after about 3 or 4 months, I was pretty bored with the practice because I pretty well had nailed it, some consistent practice on a daily basis. And I went to a spiritual guide, a person who didn't know much about the 12-step process at the time. And he became my spiritual director. That was over 30 years ago and has been ever since. And he said, Herb, after listening to me and understanding what I was attempting to achieve and experience in my life, he said, think this thought. And here again, this is revolutionary stuff. You're as powerless over your spiritual life as you are over alcohol, having no power at all. You see, he got the 12 steps. You are as powerless over your meditation as you are over alcohol, having no power at all. Sit in the presence of power, humbled by your powerlessness, and absorb and be absorbed by power. Absorb and be absorbed by the power that is deep inside of you and that surrounds you. Show up and don't leave early. He said, there's only 2 mistakes that you can make. Don't show up, leave early. If you're going to sit for a minute in meditation, set a timer. Don't be distracted by time. Set a timer. The timer will tell you when you're done. It's a method, not a technique. It's not about emotions. It's not about feelings. It's an action based on faith, that second step decision. Read page 53. We are confronted with the question of faith. What's that? It's not knowledge. It's not feeling. It's a choice. With my will, God is. And now I'm going to live my life as if it's true without any certitude and without any feeling. I'm going to live my life and behave as if it's true. And when I do, my life flourishes. So I don't care if it's true. When I live that way, my life flourishes. I have an experience. The outcomes are phenomenal. I was delivered to a place that I didn't even know existed, the basis of the set-aside prayer. Are you willing to be delivered? That's a word, the phrase that Bill used to describe his mountaintop mystical experience, his hot flash. I was delivered, he said. Are you willing to be delivered to a place that you don't even know exists? An awareness of presence and a healing of the brokenness, an augmentation of authentic self-esteem. Because one of my teachers who taught me about contemplation, by the way, talked about the core of goodness. Every human being has a core of goodness. That's the basis of the Genesis comment, the first book of the Torah, the first book of the Christian Bible, the Hebrew scripture. God made humans in God's image and likeness. That's the intent there. Image and likeness, perhaps mind and will. Listen to others more effectively when you can listen to God and listen to yourself, creating more compassion, a more sense of other people's suffering and our desire to reduce that suffering. We have discovered the cure for cancer. Bill calls our addiction cancer of the soul. Cancer of the soul from the Oxford group. Cancer of the soul. We've discovered the cure for cancer in the 12-step process. a unity with reality and a unity with our community. That's the invitation of the 12th step, isn't it? A change, to awaken and be changed in your thinking and your feeling and your behavior, every aspect of the human condition. It's done to me, not by me, that's grace, but not without me, that's my willingness to take action. This man said to me, Herb, willingness without action is fantasy. He was brilliant in these kind of distilled harpoons. He used that when I was in my 9th step, and I was rocking in my 9th step, and then I stopped, and because I got real busy with my life, and I was meeting with him, and I said, I'm real busy with my life. I'm willing to make my amends, but I haven't had time. And he said, willingness without action is fantasy. And I got very busy because I was suffering. And I finished my amends, and the suffering went away. Lighting the path for others. This is the invitation. Step 12. Read the first line of page 89, working with others. His blueprint for helping other people. Nothing will so much ensure immunity as intensive work. Immunity. All of us are overly sensitive to that word today with the pandemic just behind us. Immunization. Step 12 is immunization, lighting the path for others. In step 10, we receive the light. We keep the light full because we remove the impediments and the obstacles to the light. We become a lantern and we light the path. Become a lantern. I am responsible for my effort. The results are none of my business. When I walked out of this man's office, he gave me that. You're responsible for the effort, not the results. And oh, by the way, if you want to know if your efforts are having an effect, ask your wife how you're treating her. Pay attention to how you're driving on the freeway. Pay attention to how you're treating retail personnel, because you will improve over time. A journey, not a destination. The journey is the destination. A phrase that came to me when I was writing my book on meditation, published by Hazelton, Practicing the Here and Now. That first chapter gives an overview of all of the consciousness practices, as at least as I understand them. And then I proceed to look at each step through the lens of meditation, looking at powerlessness through the lens of power. A process, not a task. An experience, not an event. Self-actualization and self-realization. I become a human being and I grow in my humanity, becoming more spiritual through a spiritual practice and a spiritual journey. Becoming a lantern, lighting the path. Our way of living, Bill calls it as head in the clouds and feet on the ground. Our daily consciousness practice. It's a daily reprieve. Reprieve, stay of execution. Stay of an implosion as the darkness descends. And we're back in our addiction. Staying daily with our shoulder to the dimmer switch, preventing it from going backwards and pushing it forward just a little bit. That little bit of effort disproportionately rewarded with grace. An outcome much larger than I can achieve. A life that flourishes. Maybe we'll go to my current version of the 7-step prayer. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, healthy and unhealthy. I pray that you now remove from me every single inclination and behavior that gets in the way of my usefulness to you and my helpfulness to others. Grant me wisdom, strength, courage, as I go out from here to do your will by trying to live in alignment with reality as it really is. Amen.